All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I think that I've been talking to a lot of country singers lately. It seems like, these things go in waves where I have, maybe like five punk bands in a row or a bunch of rappers. And lately it's been country and roots and all those sort of genres. But I think that the guest on this episode is doing something a little bit different. And I get the impression that you come from a bit of a different background than a lot of the country artists I've talked to lately. So I think the best way to start this off is if you want to just introduce yourself and maybe give a bit of background about what it is that you do as a musician.
Hi, my name is Jessee Kowalski, or Jessee William if you're listening to the country stuff. And I am a musician in Winnipeg, and I play in a bunch of bands ranging from hardcore to punk to metal to now country.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's kind of the way that you appeared on my radar is because your EP that you've just released, it was recorded with Jordan Voth, who is not known for country music at all. I mean, he's well known in the city, obviously, but he's doing punk rock, hardcore, emo, all those kind of things, metal even. And this is obviously new territory for him. So how did this connection get made? I imagine it's got to be connected to your punk background.
Oh yeah, well, to go way back, like this is something kind of I've always had on the back burner that I've wanted to do forever, and I was kind of just scared to do it because it's so comfortable. Like I sing air quotes in a hardcore band, which is just yelling. So I can do that all day, but I was so scared to try this out. And then last fall, I finally started recording demos of this stuff that I've had for a couple years. And I sent it to Voth, and immediately he was like, let's record this. And he just started hammering me about it like every week, like, hey, are we going to record this? Let's do it. And I was like, fine. I was home for a bit over Christmas, and he's like, hey, we're recording this week. I'm like, oh, are we? He's like, yeah, we're going. I'm like, okay, we're doing it. So yeah, I've known him forever. I've recorded other projects with him, and yeah, he's the best.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, he has a sound too, a very specific sound that is not necessarily what you're doing. And I think find it interesting listening to your EP because, I mean, it's country music for sure, but it definitely sounds like it has it's being approached differently, I think, than a lot of people might assume from a country record. And that's got to be partially his influence, I would imagine, and also just your background, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I kind of like that about it. Like my friend was telling me the other day, he's like, it sounds like a pop punk album, but it's country. Like, yeah, well, it works though. I like it.
Yeah. Well, what's your background with country then? I mean, obviously it's something like you said you've been kind of thinking about for a while doing. How long have you been interested in that type of music?
Well, I grew up in Dauphin, Manitoba, home of Country Fest.
Yeah.
But no, it's just the first music I ever heard in my life. It's always been a constant in my life. And then I always laugh, like, when you're a teenager and you get into punk, then it's just like tunnel vision. You don't care about anything else. And then, then you start hearing like, remember getting into like Lucero and stuff and just being like, oh, this is like country kind of. And then I was like, oh, I'm allowed to like this stuff still. I don't just have to like loud, angry music. I can still like all this stuff I grew up on. So it's always just been a constant.
There's a comparison too. I mean, country and punk both have that kind of three chords and the truth thing, right? Where it's, I mean, the songwriting is similar, even though it sounds very different. But it's like the core of it, the structure of it, isn't that different when you really compare the two genres.
Oh, definitely. I remember when I used to be in Elder Abuse at one point. I was in that band. Me and Alex, the singer, we would always be driving overnight and we'd be talking, and I'd always play country. And I remember telling him, like, man, this is just pop punk. I'm telling you, country and punk, it's the same thing. So yeah.
Well, and you have that a Danger Cat cover on the EP as well, right? So that's literally taking a pop punk song, turning it to country.
Yeah. I was happy they were cool with me doing that. That's one of my favorite songs. Every time I pick up a guitar, I would always noodle on it as a warm up, and then started messing around, and it kind of worked. So I messaged Keith and Romer. I was like, I'm going to try this. If you're okay with it, I'd like to record it. And they were like, go for it. So
cool. Well, what is I mean, I know I'm so sick of talking about this, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. Shows aren't really happening right now. You've just released this EP in a time when the traditional way to release things is not existent. I mean, I know you've put it out online. How do you intend on kind of getting this out there to more people? Assuming things maybe ease up a bit on the COVID front and shows can actually start happening again.
Well, I have a small label too that I do, and I think my plan is I just got a quote back for for vinyl. So I'm gonna press it, just a small run, put it out there and see what happens. And I have more stuff written, and I just gonna start recording and putting it out and go for it. Take that fun thing we learn in hardcore and punk, where you just put your head down and work at it, and hope, I do it because I like it and it's fun. So yeah, hopefully I can do something cool with it though.
Yeah, yeah, I hope so for sure. But I mean, and sonically, I mean, you have Rory on there playing like pedal steel, right? And that
Oh yeah.
definitely gives it the twang. And he's played with so many people in Winnipeg and beyond. But what's your sort of plan for presenting this live when you can do live? Are you going to get people from the punk scene to be playing country with you, or are you hoping to sort of expand it out to be more of a country from the country kind of group community in Winnipeg?
Um, I'd imagine it'll probably be most of my like punk friends playing. Like I mean, I don't really know a lot of the people in the country community. But like you said, Rory played on it, and that was like I when I was recording it, I was like, okay, well, I need pedal steel,
Yeah,
and I posted it on Instagram. I was like, who knows the guy? And then immediately I got like 20 messages. They're like, this is the guy. Message him, and I messaged him. He replied instantly, and he was at the at Voth's studio a couple days later, and I was floored when he showed up, because I've never dealt with like a session thing before, so I was kind of nervous. How is this gonna go? But he showed up like over prepared and just like knocked it out of the park. And he would even be like, oh, I think I can do better, and he would just keep pushing himself. And then like he's what makes the EP, in my opinion. Like he's the secret sauce on it. It's perfect. Killed it. But yeah, as far as it was cool. I kind of, as soon as I put it out, I had a bunch of people message me and be like, if you play live, I want to play on this. So now I got to sift through and assemble a band, I guess.
well, it's a good problem to have, right? More people than
Yeah.
you can handle wanting to play on it. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to dwell too much on the country versus punk thing and the comparisons, but I mean, having that pedal steel on there kind of gives it that authentic sound. And I feel like both genres are very, the idea of being authentic and being genuine is pretty strong. In both punk rock and country, people can smell bullshit, and they can sort of easily identify when someone is not being honest and genuine about what they're putting out there. Was that a concern for you about the idea of maybe you're not country enough to be doing a country record?
Yeah, I think so. But like, well, yeah, it definitely was. But I mean, country as in aesthetic, I would say I was worried, because when you think of country, and then in the last couple years, like I really like Orville Peck and a lot of that stuff, but it's like, people kind of see, okay, you got to have a cowboy hat and dress a certain way. So I was worried about the presentation of it being not accepted, but I've been confident in the songs. Like you said, like, people smell, like they can tell when something's genuine. And I had the utmost faith in the songs speaking for themselves, but I was kind of worried. It's like, oh, just this, hardcore guy playing country. It's like, people might write it off just based on that. Yeah, but I don't know. I think it's been pretty positive so far.
Well, and you hope people wouldn't write you off without listening to it first, because I mean, I think when you listen to it, it has that feel, even though it has kind of the rock edge to it from the production and from your background. The one song that really stands out for me of the four is the last song, which almost has like a Neil Young Crazy Horse kind of vibe to it.
Oh, yeah.
With like it's very very heavy on the electric guitars and everything like that. And I mean, it does fit with the rest of the EP, but it certainly is. It's an outlier. Like it's definitely different. What's the story behind that one? Why did you decide to end it on something considerably heavier? Not heavy, but heavier and more kind of electric, I guess, than some of the other songs.
I don't know. I think when I was putting them all together, I think I kind of just put it in order of songs as I wrote them. But
Okay.
that one I had for quite a long time, and the demos I sent Voth were even more a little more crazy. Like he really helped me tone down some of the rock edge to it. Like there was way more soloing and just, excuse me, weird stuff going on in it. But that one I was kind of nervous to actually do. Originally we were just going to do the first two in the Danger Cat song, but when we were there, we actually were like, okay, maybe we should try it. And then we were talking to Rory, and I had the demo of it there, and I was like, do you think you could maybe last second, like he was in the studio, he'd finished the other three, and I was like, do you think you could maybe just try and toss some steel over this, and we're going to try and actually record a real version? He's like, yeah. So he did it. And then when we when I heard the finished version that we did with Jordan, I was like, okay, this has to be on there. It's perfect. But yeah, I love that song. I don't know. It was I don't know if I really sat down to write something that rocking, but it just kind of came out it came out while I was doing it. So it just, yeah.
And I guess having something like that on the record too gives you some leeway live, in a sense.
Yeah.
If you do want to take the show in a more rocking kind of direction, you have that as part of the set, right? So it wouldn't seem out of place to suddenly just crank everything up, and if that's part of the program, right? Yeah.
I think that will be the case live, because no matter what I do, like even recording the acoustic and stuff on this in the studio, I just, I'm a punk guy, I'm a hardcore guy at heart, and it'll always shine through no matter what.
Yeah. Well, how do people hear this? I mean, I know, again, shows aren't happening at the time we're recording this, but the good thing about this being a podcast is someone could hear it a year from now, and hopefully you're playing a bunch of shows and things have changed. You got more music out there. So what's the best way to sort of keep up with what you're up to?
It's on every streaming platform. I have a Bandcamp too, and I have an Instagram. They're all just my name, Jessee William. I got 2 E's at the end of Jessee. It wasn't an aesthetic choice. It was my mom's weird choice for some reason. So, yeah.
That stands out, right? I mean, people remember the 2 E's for sure.
Yeah.
And then, so like you said, you're hoping to put out a short run of vinyl on this. And are physical copies in any other formats going to come out, or you're just going to do digital and vinyl?
I was thinking originally I was going to do a tape, but then I started looking at pressing vinyl, and I found a couple places that do shorter run for
Cool.
a price that isn't offensive. So I was like, it's like perfect length for a 7-inch. So let's just do it and see what happens.
Well, now that it's out, and now that you kind of, people have heard it and you're getting feedback, and then you're kind of thinking of what to do with this release, like you said, putting out a 7-inch, what's next? I mean, do you have a bunch of other songs in this vein that you're working on? Are you hoping to do a follow-up to this soon, or is that kind of off in the distance once this thing has kind of got out there a bit more?
Like I'm always writing stuff, and I think the plan will be to do like a full length by the fall, hopefully.
Okay.
Like me and Jordan are already talking about, lining up the next set of recording, but I have such an insane work schedule that it's kind of hard. But as trying to line this up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think the plan is to just keep churning it out. Like I'm excited about it, and I don't know. I don't want to like over inundate people with it, but I have the songs and I'm passionate about it and I'm excited. So why not just keep recording and putting it out? If people like it, that's cool. Yeah.
That's what you want, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully people dig it. Yeah, for sure. All right, so this is kind of a bonus guest on this episode. It's Jordan Voth, who produced and recorded this EP we've been talking about. And I guess the first question I have for you is what the hell are you doing making a country record?
He asked. He said, like, he's been sending me demos of this stuff pretty much since the start of the pandemic. My understanding is that he's been working on this for years. Yeah, and he always just sent it over to me and said, like, what do you think? Is it good? And yeah, like I it's not actually the first country record I've done. I have done some country stuff in the past, but it is few and far between considering the stuff that I normally do. But he asked, and he's a good friend of mine. I've known him for a long time. So when he asked if I would do it, I had no hesitation about doing that for him.
Cool. Well, one of the things I talked about with him too is kind of the idea of it being a country record, but because of his background and because of your background, it doesn't necessarily have a country sound. I mean, the country sound is there, but there's obviously like kind of a punk edge to it, and the way it's recorded is more in line with what you're normally recording, and it kind of gives it a unique vibe. Is there anything different that you would do on your end as far as making something like this versus making a punk record or an emo record or a metal record or hardcore record?
Not really. Like there were some choices during the recording where I used maybe techniques or equipment that kind of skews more, mellow sounding or warmer. Like I used like I think for almost everything that you hear on it, there's a ribbon microphone that mic'd it up. So that's just more of a warmer, kind of less upfront sound. But beyond that, no, nothing too out of the usual. Like I think for pretty much like regardless of genre, I think you can always kind of fall back on like just simple techniques and you know, if you have like a base level understanding of how to record properly and gain structure and things like that, I think you can record any genre. I think really where a lot of the sound of that record comes from is Jessee and his vision for it. Like obviously, like he's not aiming for like Keith Urban, but he's trying to do like more of like an outlaw country or like a cowpunk kind of thing. Yeah, and so I think a lot of the sound that you hear on the record is him and his vision, and I'm really just there for a lot of it, just kind of capturing and facilitating that being recorded. There were a few things that I did, like I played drums on it, and I did some backup vocals for him as well. But one of the real kind of magic moments was having Rory come in and do the slide guitar on it. He was fantastic. It was a pretty like, it was fun to hear that. Like it sounds incredible.
I was going to ask about that actually, because that really makes the album, like that's a distinctive sound on that record. Is just having that on every track. Had you ever recorded pedal steel before?
Okay, there's 3 instruments on this thing that I've never recorded before: banjo, harmonica, and the pedal steel. And all 3 were kind of like, you know, what the hell am I going to do with this? Like just way out of my wheelhouse. But yeah, like his playing and his rig that he brought here, it sounded the way it does on the record, like just standing in front of it. Like he had an amp that's specifically voiced for a pedal steel. I believe it's made by Quilter. And he plugged in, and immediately from him and his instrument, the sound that you hear on the record is in the room. So it's not that hard. Like you just got to like get it on tape really. Yeah, so there are some different instruments and stuff that I'm not necessarily used to seeing, but as long as they sound good, you know, like if it sounds the way it should on a record in the room, then it's really just a matter of me making sure that happens on my end.
Right.
So it wasn't that difficult. It wasn't too challenging.
I guess preparing for this, did you like specifically go out of your way to listen to more country than maybe you would have before, or did you just do it in your typical sort of style you would normally set up for recording someone?
I listened to like a bunch of Hank 3. My partner listens to a lot of like 90s country, and the production on that stuff is always like really smooth. Like I think it predates some of the digital stuff, so it's, you know, predominantly tape-based productions, and like those productions, they're leaning really, really heavily on like exceptional performers and players and stuff like that. So it's not like this is a style of music that I'm unfamiliar with, but I listened to some Hank 3. He had some other references, some points of like, just check this out and give this a listen. So I listened to some Neil Young as well on Spotify. How retro.
Well, and this is a big Neil Young influence. And the last track on there, it's super Crazy Horse vibes. I get off that.
Exactly. And you know what? It's good that I've had a few people tell me that, like, oh, that song has big, like, Neil Young vibes. It's like, well, that's what he was kind of going for there. I listened to some Fleetwood Mac too. Like, that's kind of in my regular rotation anyways a bit, but just dug into some of those older sounds and yeah, I mean, it wasn't as hard. I think the whole thing came together in 3 or 4 weeks. Like it didn't take that long. I think the biggest hurdle with that was getting him to be confident in himself. Like when he was sending me demos, he was always like, hey, is this good? You sure it doesn't suck? And like, didn't suck. It was great. The demos were very similar to what got put out. There's a few little more bells and whistles that are added in. Obviously the slide guitar adds a dimension, and there's real instruments on this one as opposed to like virtual GarageBand type stuff on his demos. But if you compared the two of them, it's not night and day. One's just a bit of a nicer representation of the other.
Cool.